In today's session, we will understand what is reflection in Java. Before understanding what is reflection, let's understand one very simple thing. That there is a very basic building blocks of Java known as objects. Right? Now, this object or objects is something that belongs only to JVM. The outside world of JVM is completely unknown to what an object is, right? So it's a foreign material for them. So outside JVM, there is no existence of something called as objects. So objects are not known outside JVM. So what does this mean? Is objects in Java cannot be stored in disk or cannot be transmitted over any network, right? But we are also aware at the same time that this particular functionality does happen. For example, let's say Java objects do send over the data to JSON, XML, and different applications, right, and different parameters. So so one thing to be clear is I'm talking about Java objects and not about class or .java file, right? .class and .java are files, and what we are talking about here is objects, right? We're talking about objects. Fine. So what is the way that enables these objects that can be sent over, right? So there is a term known as serialization and deserialization, right? I guess most of you must have heard this. So what serialization means is, serialization says that to convert, or it is a mechanism of converting Java objects into a transmittable format, maybe, right? And deserialization says process of converting transmittable format back to a language construct. So these terms serialization and deserializations are language agnostic, right? It has nothing to do only with Java, but it is a part of Java. Right? Most of the other languages do support serialization and deserializations as well. So this is language agnostic, right? So how does this happen? Right. So this serialization and deserialization concept gives rise to the concept of reflection. Right? Hope that makes sense. Now, what I mean is, without reflection, it is difficult. Let's say if reflection is not there, it's difficult to know what exists inside a class or what object and object parameter does a class have, right? So this is not possible, definitely not possible at runtime. Let's see an example. So there is a class known as JSON. So JSON is a class which is used mostly to convert Java objects to JSON and JSON to Java object, right? So let's say this is JSON, right? So let's say here it is JSON and here it is Java. Okay, the JSON class is responsible to convert a Java to JSON and JSON back to Java, right? So let's say, for example, right, so we have, let's create a small example, maybe a snippet that will explain what I want to say. Let's create an object of JSON G equals to new JSON, right? And let's say we already have a class existing, person P equals to new person. I'm considering that this particular person class has its own getter and setter method set and developed. So let's say consists of one of the objects age. I'm passing the value as 25 to the age, and one more parameter, let's say name. I'm passing the value Ashok to it. Okay. Now if next thing what I'm going to do is string data is equals to g dot to JSON, and I'll pass the parameter p. Right, I'll pass the parameter p. So what I'm doing here is I am passing the object of person class to the object of JSON class and saying it to convert this particular data that I have in person class to a JSON format, and this particular method is responsible to do so. Right? This particular method is responsible to do so. So if I print, let's say if I print data, if I do system dot out dot println, and if I print data, right, data equals to less data. Right? So this will give me the JSON output of JSON format of age and name, right? Whatever the JSON format is gonna be, it's gonna give me that, right? It will give me that. Those values will be returned as a JSON format. And the reverse is also true. So if I create a particular statements, let's say if I do person p2, let's say equals to g dot from JSON, and I pass JSON and the same, let's say I'm passing the same value here within double quotes obviously, and then we need to specify in this particular function, right? This particular function would be accepting a JSON and the class within which you need to store it. So since we are storing it into the object of a person class, we need to mention the person dot class so that it understands this, right? So here if you see, you are converting object to JSON, and here you're converting JSON to object, right? So a typical example of how this is happening. So but the question that is interesting is, how does JSON class object G understand that what is the content of P object? Right? So P contains age and name. How does G comes to know that? Right? How does it know that? So there is a concept in Java that is known as, very interesting concept. I guess some of us might be knowing it, but I believe most of us might not be knowing it. There is a class called class, right? So I would say a class, right? So we all were introduced in the beginning of in Java tutorials that class is a blueprint. Class is a blueprint, right? Contains a different runtime entity that we call as a object, correct? So what is class? What is class? So class is nothing but a way to have a reference to other classes, right? In other words, if I say this is nothing but a reference to point to the definition or metadata of any class, right? So we know that the class contains the blueprint or the metadata of any class, right? And so class of class will point to the reference to this particular definition, to whatever class you're pointing to, right? So this is a good concept that you should be knowing what is a class. So if this is new for someone, this is going to help you out. So how would you know this, right? So class, if you create a object of class, let's say class obj class equals to, let's say o dot get class, and then get class, o dot get class is the member function of class, right? So within this there are a couple of functions that is available. Let's say obj class dot get declared fields, obj class dot get methods. There are a couple of many more, right? So this is one of the functions that are available. There are many more functions that are available as such, right? So if you pass, let's say for example, if I have a, let's say let's say I have a class public static void main, right? Within this class you perform the value within this, you have a lot of snippets within this going, and you have a person p equals to new person created, right? And then you have a couple of more snippets. There is one more let's say a new function that we call out, let's say parent object, and we pass this p or object of person class to this method. Now let's define this particular method. How it's going to be, let's say static void parent object, and since we're passing an object, so we need to receive the same. We'll create object of object class, and then we need to get the details of this particular object, right? So as we said, class of class, let's define class obj class equals to o dot get class, right? So if you want to print the value of the class using which the object has been referenced here, what you need to do is you just need to do a system dot out dot println. All you need to do is obj class dot get simple name, right? If you just call on this function that is defined within the class, you would get the name of the class that is it's referencing to using the current object. Okay, now how do you reference the fields that are available within the object of the class that has been sent to the class? Okay, so let's do a for field obj class. As we discussed, a particular method that says get declared fields, right? You can iterate over this field method. So if it says, let's say field dot get type, this method is responsible to return the type of the object that is defined, or type of the parameter that is defined within the class is equal to integer, and so int dot class, right? You need to capture the value. What value is going to capture? Let's say value is equals to string dot value of field dot get int, and obviously need to pass the object, right? So this will return you the value of the integer file. For example, let's say we had defined age within it, so it's gonna give you the output as whatever age and the value associated with it. So let's say we pass 25, so this is going to return you 25, right? So this will return you 25, right? So this is the way in which you can any particular program normally does a reflection in Java. So this is how the codes are able to be interpolated during runtime. Yeah, so if you have any kind of more questions, I won't be taking much of your time. If you have any kind of questions, do type to mention it in the comments. And for more such interesting videos, do not forget to subscribe to the channel. See you, folks.